writer director Steven Kostanski. He did this pretty awesome horror comedy genre film called Psycho Goreman. And once I saw this, I was like, I have to get this guy on this show. Thanks for being on with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. So, just real quick, where did this idea come from?
I mean, it's very much a culmination of my experiences as a kid watching movies that maybe were not suitable for a kid. Uh,
Like trauma
I mean,
stuff?
everybody keeps bringing up Trauma, but I did not watch Trauma as a kid, not at
All
all.
right.
But more stuff like Terminator 2, RoboCop was a big one.
Oh, yeah.
I had a very specific experience where my parents rented me Guyver 2 Dark Hero,
I love the
and
Guyver films.
I thought it was going to be like a Power Rangers movie, and it ended up being super violent. So that had a pretty profound effect on me. And so I wanted to make a movie that somehow like brought back that feeling of like watching a movie that has all the sci-fi action trappings that you want from this type of genre film, but then also has the kind of brutal consequences of a hard R movie from that era. And just as a way of like working through those traumas
Yeah.
as a kid watching those types of movies. As far as like the plot itself, I was watching Rawhead Rex, and as I was watching that, I was getting a little bored because I mean it's a pretty straightforward movie. Not
Yeah.
to rip on, to turn this this podcast into a shitting on Rawhead Rex podcast, but I was getting a little bored, and I started thinking in my head like, what would I do with this to spice this up? And I came up with the idea of like, all right, you got this evil alien warlord guy that's being resurrected,
Yeah.
dug up from the earth. Instead of him just terrorizing a town, like what if you mashed it with ET
Oh my
and
God.
turned it, and you took the like kind of dark horror sci-fi element and mashed it with kids adventure film. And so once I settled on that core concept, it was really easy to just riff on that and come up with more and more absurd scenarios. Especially once I decided that like I didn't want there to be any kind of moral to the movie. I didn't want PG to learn anything or
Right.
like become a good person at the end. Like
Yeah.
all of those conventions don't interest me. So once I decided like no, he's evil at the start and he's evil at the end. He's just kind of delusional at the end. And
Yes.
same for the other characters. Everybody's convinced themselves that they've like learned some important lesson and things are good now, but
Right.
clearly they're not. Which I feel like is more true to life than what those movies typically present, where it's like, oh yeah, you have a huge turn in your character where they realize the error of their ways and they become good. It's like, no, I think we just convince ourselves that we're doing better and we keep doing the bad things that we were doing anyway. So
I
yeah,
love
once I settled on those core concepts, it was really easy to just riff on goofy sci-fi action stuff to throw around in the movie.
that the theme of your story is that there should be no theme, which is pretty great. And it really pays off because they are delusional. And the fact that you have um, Psycho Goreman, who's being bossed around by this pretty wild young girl who has, this godlike character at her whim. And then she just instead, has him playing the drums in her band or turn a boy she has a crush on into a creature that has to follow her around and all of these cool little things, which makes sense if you look at little kids, because little kids can be, I mean, like as a dad, when they're really little, they're kind of crazy. They can be kind of
Yeah.
psycho. Yeah.
Well, and that was another big revelation for me when coming up with the concept for the movie. Was initially it was a very like more straightforward, like the kids are good and PG is bad scenario.
Right.
But I started reflecting on my experiences with other kids in my life, like kids of relatives and
Yeah.
coworkers, and realizing like, oh yeah, like they're all nuts, and that's kind of what's awesome about kids is
Yeah.
that they don't have all of the like the weight of adulthood on their shoulders. They don't have the self-reflectiveness
Right.
to like feel shame in any way, or there's no anxiety. They just
Yeah.
go for it. They just go nuts, and they are at an age where they craft the world into what they want it to be.
Yes.
And I find that so pure and interesting. And to pair that with PG, who technically is the same, like he
Yeah.
is this all powerful being that is turning the universe into what he wants it to be. So
Yeah.
like really Mimi and Luke are like one and the same in my opinion. And that's, I wanted to draw those parallels. It seemed more interesting to me than having the kids be super innocent
Oh, no.
and kind of just let the plot happen to them. It made
Right.
more sense to make them not sinister, but like,
Well,
you know, a little more intense than your average
kids
kid
like
movie.
any parent will admit that that when their kids are little enough, they're sociopaths. That's exactly what it is. And the fact that you went for a little bit more of an exaggerated take on that, it makes it endearing and definitely makes this a film that has never been done before. It's wholly original. I interviewed the guy who did Dave Made a Maze because I thought that was an incredible film and totally
Oh,
unique.
yeah.
And this is on that scale. I mean, I was just like, I grabbed my wife. I said, "You got to watch this film." We watched this film. I was like, I mean, it's like it's that good. It's funny. The comedy is there. It doesn't seem random. It's all very thread together. And what I really thought was cool is you have all of these awesome creature effects, which I'm sure you're. Are you an effects artist or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my day job. That's where I just came from actually. I was
is
working at
it?
the shop because
Well,
yeah, I bounce back and forth between doing effects and directing
yeah,
projects.
absolutely incredible. And I have to tell you, you were nailing that 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 line between a Power Rangers ish and the horror aspects of a RoboCop. I mean, I could see the influences after you tell it to me. Um, and the really cool thing with the creatures, though, is they all look like they had backstories. Like I want to see more from the PG world now.
Yeah, well, that was my intention. Was I wanted to emulate, and like I know everybody says this with their monster movies that they want to do like the Star Wars Cantina, where
Right.
where you're just kind of seeing kind of like glimpses of things, and you want to know more about those characters. To me, it was like definitely influenced by that early Star Wars logic. For me, more specifically, it was like the bounty hunter lineup in Empire Strikes Back,
Gotcha.
where it's like you see them so briefly, and let's be honest, like overall, over the course of those movies, Boba Fett didn't do a whole lot, but you're still obsessed, and you're like, I want to know
Yeah,
more about this guy.
exactly.
And so I just wanted characters that each felt of their own entirely of their own universe that made you go like, I want to know why that guy's like meat brain in a tube, or like I want to know why there's a snake lady there, you know? Like
Yeah.
I wanted that. I wanted to feel like you just took a bunch of action figures and like from different genres of toys and just like mashed them together. And
It,
it's like it doesn't make sense, but at the same time your brain wants to figure out how to make it make sense.
No, it's very well developed. I mean, one of the characters that grabbed me was one that looked like a cemetery. And I was like, that's an amazing monster. Why does that monster look like a cemetery? Why do they have tombstones on their back and using them as weapons? I mean, it's absolutely incredible in the amount of like creativity and development and thought that you put into that. You're creating a visual story with every character, which is it's just next level stuff.
Well, that's also just the nature of how I like telling stories. I have to admit, I do not particularly enjoy writing. I mean, sometimes I kind of do, but to me, words on a like putting my ideas on the page is not the same as putting them into a physical thing.
Got you.
And so I like even in the script, like the descriptions for all these characters were super brief. Like
Okay.
there maybe be like a couple words being like, she's a lady made out of vines and tombstones. But it's like I like telling that story as I'm making the stuff in the
That
shop.
makes
Like I
sense.
like fabricating and building things and kind of discovering what the character is as I'm making it. I'm not a fan of the like traditional creature design process of like do a ZBrush or a Photoshop and then everybody discusses it and talks about things to tweak and then you like
Right.
finesse it. Like I love just like throwing a random idea at somebody being like, he's a trash can and he's full of body parts and he shoots blood. And I don't know, it's just like being more intuitive about it and less
Right.
intellectual about it.
Yeah.
And just kind of going with my gut and being like, well, this is what it needs to be because I know it will look crazy. And
Yeah.
it will just have a more of an effect on people. Because I find, yeah, creature design, especially like in the past like 20 years even, I find everything gets whittled down to looking like basically the same thing.
Interesting.
And I wanted this movie to be like, to go back to an older style and a more Japanese like Sentai style of like, this guy's got a clock for a face, you know, like that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Where you're just like, that's absurd, but it's also kind of awesome. Like, you gotta, for a movie like this to work, you gotta commit to the absurdity and never doubt that the craziest idea is the best one.
I love that is a good way to describe this film. It has an absurd sense of humor and it is awesome. So I think that is entirely accurate. And I love the practical effects. You don't see many practical effects nowadays. Everything tends to be CGI or painted in, like you mentioned. And you guys really went for it. And that can't be cheap, coming up with that and being able to put all that together.
It had to be. I mean, it had to be cheap. It was just a case of like me and my unpaid intern and my producer who offered to help out in the shop. It was like the three of us building everything late at night on our own because we couldn't afford to pay the shop to build any more stuff. Yeah, it was very low budget.
Yeah.
Definitely did not have enough money to do what we needed to do. So it was just a lot of like just make it happen somehow. A lot of stuff cobbled together on set, repurposing a lot of things. Like, we shot the movie in 2 blocks. So the first block had like the warehouse scene with the thugs. It had the council scene and all the flashback stuff.
Right.
And so we would take stuff from those scenes, and for the second block of principal photography, we would repurpose all the stuff from that block into different things for the next block. So it was a lot of like, yeah, just rejigging stuff, pretending it's a different thing.
Smart.
I mean, just doing it the real low budget way. And yeah, that's just how I do things. I mean, I've been making movies since I was a little kid and been doing it for no money my whole life. So it's kind of the only way I know how to do stuff at this point. I wouldn't, if I had a ton of money on a movie like this, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I would still be up late building things by myself because that's just how I want it to be, I guess. Half the fun is the challenge of figuring out how to do it when you don't have enough resources to do it.
Well, I mean, it's smart filmmaking, to say the least, because this does not look like a low budget film to me. It looks good quality. The character and the acting and the characters are all really well done. Special effects are awesome. And I just think that whatever your process is you have mastered it. And also, for someone who says that he doesn't enjoy writing, there is quite a really good wit to your dialogue. I have to be honest with you. There's a scene where Psycho Goreman first meets, I believe her name was it Mimi? The young girl? Yeah, the young girl, Mimi. Yep. And she discovers she has the gem to control him and that he's like this being of ultimate evil, right? Which is really cool. And so he's threatening her with, death and pain and all of these horrible things she's going to do to her. And then she's like, okay, bye. And I was like, that is brilliant. And
well, I feel like that's how a kid would react in a lot of these situations. Like, I want that sequence to feel like a kid getting shitty with their dad more than anything. Like, I feel like because she's so used to Greg, like her dad in real life, like just being a total pushover and like
deadbeat dad.
Yeah, being a deadbeat dad, and her brother being such a like doormat.
Totally a doormat. Oh my god.
That like she doesn't know anything else. So the idea of somebody like the idea of somebody challenging her and her like bending to their will is just, it does not compute in her brain. She does not, she wouldn't even know how to handle that. So to her, it's just, she's always in charge and that's just how it goes. And nothing will change your mind on that.
Nothing's going to change your mind. Not even an overbearing mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So do you have anything else coming up? I mean, this is your big thing, right? It's I think it's coming out on DVD soon.
Yeah,
Uh,
March 16th is the DVD and Blu-ray release.
awesome.
As far as like what's next, I mean, I'm just working in the shop on effects on The Boys and Umbrella Academy right now. I'm
Oh,
working
that's
for,
amazing.
yeah, I work for Masters Effects in Toronto. I've been working for them for almost 5 years now, and yeah, it's just a great team over there. I feel like I should probably be writing things and making other movies, but I like to go back and forth between doing effects and directing because there's just things I love about both. And like last fall, I was working on Day of the Dead, the TV series. I directed some episodes of that. So this to me, working in the shop right now is like my break from
Yeah.
directing. So when I'm done doing effects, I'll probably jump back into some project, and hopefully it's more PG stuff, which is another thing we're discussing right now. It feels like people.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it feels like people want more PG, so I'm totally into it.
It's you've created your own little, like, MCU, I think, and I think a lot of people are excited to see you play in it. But of course, taking the time you need to recharge and, regather everything you need to get back out there. Do you have any advice for writers or directors out there that are in the indie industry and just really try to make it happen? Because you're a guy that does it.
I mean, the advice I give everybody is like, there's no reason why you can't go do the thing you want to do, especially now. Like, like phones can shoot movies now. I find a lot of people seem to get buried under the weight of like, oh, I don't have the resources, I don't have what I need to put my vision on screen. It's like, well, yeah, you do. It's just you got to be creative about how you do it. Like that's half the work I think of making stuff in the indie world is figuring out how to do it with what you have and not like being like not throwing your hands up and being like I can't do this just because
Right.
you don't have just because you can't shoot it on an Arri Alexa or whatever and have a crew of 50 people. Like there's always ways to make things happen.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years, being a very introverted person who started in stop motion and was hoping to never have to work with people. I've really grown to appreciate a good crew and a good team, and teamwork is so important when you're making your project. So
Right.
finding the right people that you get along with or share your passion, building that little community for yourself is super important. I mean, when I was still in university, I started working with the other guys in Astron 6, who's our like film collective that we made Manborg and Father's Day, and the editor of a bunch of short films. And we all shared a passion for filmmaking. We all helped each other on our movies. So I think for like aspiring filmmakers out there, like finding your community and supporting them, and then them supporting you is like it's just crucial to getting your stuff made.
Right. And you can do that locally. Any local area has a burgeoning film community somewhere. You just have to get your way in there. Yeah. And make friends and network and be that kind of like type A personality who's not going to give up and is just going to forge forward. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also a walking example of like you don't need to necessarily like be like worst case scenario, you just have to do it yourself. So accepting that you can do everything yourself if
Right.
you need to, and learn all the jobs, like learn how to operate a camera, learn how to record sound, learn how to edit.
Yeah.
Because this is totally contradicting what I just said. Like, yes, teamwork is important. Teamwork is super valuable, but
Yeah.
knowing all the roles is super crucial as well. Because not like teamwork is important, but not depending on people is also important.
Right.
Otherwise, yeah, you'll never get your stuff made.
No, I think that
you
makes
need both aspects.
I think that makes total sense. I mean, that's the kind of that Robert Rodriguez method, right? I mean, he shoots, he edits, he writes, he directs, he's like a one-man show, but then he surrounds himself with talent that he can rely on as well. But I think being well-rounded gives you the ability to really understand everything that's going into it and even write around it. Like I tell actors or I tell writers, take an acting class, try improv, maybe try a directing class, like, because it makes you better to understand the other jobs that other people have to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, exactly. Like understanding what everyone's doing on your set is super important
Yeah.
because you'll know you need to know when they're not doing their job well. Uh, just trying to predict when things are going to go wrong is another crucial skill as a filmmaker. So if you understand people's jobs and you understand what they're doing, you'll be able to see like, oh, maybe let's not film, over there because we're on a flight path with the airport and sound is going to be crap. So just yeah, thinking like proactively in that way about everybody's job and what are some of the like problems that could arise from whatever shooting situation you're coming up with. And yeah, just always being on top of stuff and being aware.
Well, Stephen, I have to say, thank you again for your time. Psycho Goreman was fantastic. I don't say that lightly. I love the fact that you're considering playing in that universe some more. And I also wanted to tell you one of my favorite characters for some reason was the zombie cop. For that got
Oh
me.
yeah.
I was cracking up. It's such a dark and morbid sense of humor that you have truly mastered. And it's subtle as well. So I mean, I don't really crack up hard during a movie, but you got me on that bit.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's actually that character's name is Biocop, and he is a character from. I did a short film that plays at the end of one of my other features,
Okay.
Manborg, that I made back in 2011. I think it came out.
Okay. Okay.
There's like a short film called Biocop that's all about that character. And so ever since then, people have been hassling me to like make a Biocop movie. So I worked him into Psycho Goreman. This is kind of like his origin story. So
Ah.
there could potentially be adventures of just that character down the road. We'll see. But yeah, he's one of my favorites too.
Yeah. Beautifully done, sir. All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great talking to you.